Watch me wreck the night. Watch me wreck the night. Psycho! Simon. Oh, not you. I thought I sent you home. Well, I've not finished my act yet, you see. You're a sensation with the ladies all over the world. Yes, I am. Just tell me, can you let me in on your little secret? Well, I speak different languages. Really? Can you speak Spanish? Can you? No. How am I going to do it then? I'll tell you what. I'm going to count to 10 in English and then you translate. OK, let's see what you got. 1, uno, 2, dos, 3, hang on. What? This isn't going to work. Why not? You're going to count to 10? Yes. How do I know when you get to 6? Is this going to hurt? No. Forget it. Amanda! Shut up, Louis. That's not Louis. No. It looks just like him. No, it's not him. Amanda, I got the oil ready. OK. Simon, I'm a celebrity. Get me out of here. Anita. Oh, Simon. Listen to me. Yes. You two are always together. That's because we go together so well. Oh. We go together like ding-a-dong, together forever. Shoot-up, shoot-waddy-waddy, da-da-da-ding-a-dong. Ching-ching-ching-ching-ching-ching-ching. We'll always be as one. Whoa, 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 whoa. And it's a big fat kiss. Unbelievable. Well done, Steve. Brilliant.
Hello, my name is Landon Harvey. Welcome to Landon Live. And tonight, we have our first ventriloquist from the UK, Steve Hewlett. Steve, how are you doing tonight?
I made it. Hi, Landon. Do you know what I'm thinking when I'm watching that clip? I'm thinking, I've still got that suit. I've still got it. I can't get in it. And it's my goal in after lockdown to try and get back into that suit because I've turned into a chef and I've been eating all of the evidence.
Yeah, I think everyone has.
Great to see you, Landon.
Oh, great to see you too. Let's just get right into it. What was your early inspiration in ventriloquism? Did you start off as a ventriloquist? What's your story?
I did. It's all I've ever done. So I was 12 years old. I was watching a television show in England. It was a British ventriloquist. And the only reason I sat down to watch it was because he lived 5 minutes from my house. So I sat down and it was a TV talent show, like America's Got Talent, Britain's Got Talent, but it was called New Faces back then. And a ventriloquist called Jimmy Tamley won the whole show. He won the whole thing. And so I knocked on his door the next day on the way to school. I was 12 years old in 1987. And I said, will you teach me what you do? And he said, no, go away. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. It was because it was on the way to school. And I did learn this in later years that you don't knock on an entertainer's door at 8 o'clock in the morning before you go to school. You wait till after school. I respect that now. He's got me back since. Because I became a godfather to his children, and he used to let them, when I used to stay over, he used to let them wake me up whatever time they wanted to. So he's got his own back. But Jimmy Tamley, I spoke to him yesterday. We're best of friends even today, and it's like 33 years ago since that moment. But so I was inspired by him. But just after he won New Faces, Ron Lucas came over to the UK, and he had a hit TV show for 4 years called The Ron Lucas Show. And I went to meet Ron, I got a little gift actually for. So because he had like 4 TV series over here, I was like really in awe of Ron Lucas, because he was on every week, you know. I think it was like 6 episodes, and then there was like 4 seasons, and I got a little Scorch watch, which I treasure, which is
that's super neat.
Yeah, an amazing gift. He gave that to his friends back then, so I think I got it from a friend of a friend of a friend of Ron. But so Ron Lucas and Jimmy Townley really started me off inspiration-wise. Ron was the first ventriloquist I recorded. It was, you might not know this, Landon, but we had VHS recording tapes. There's no CDs or downloading.
Yeah, my parents say the same thing to me. They're like, we had this thing called a VHS tape. Yeah,
that's it. It was VHS or NTSC, I think you had over there. And so I recorded Ron Lucas. The first thing I recorded was him, and then the next week there was another ventriloquist on this TV show with Jim Davidson called Wednesday at 8, and it was David Strassman. And then the following week, they had Jay Johnson. So I saw three top American ventriloquists.
Oh, those are some big names.
Yeah, and then I saw Willie Tyler, and it just went from there. I was just hooked. Whenever a ventriloquist was on, I would be hooked to the TV, and it's all I've ever done since '87. This is it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you ever have a real or formal job, or was it just ventriloquism from the moment you?
I've always been working since I was 11. So I used to deliver newspapers, you know, and I was delivering them to the until I turned into a ventriloquist. And then I done my first show. I raised £8, which is about $12, for this charity. And I remember delivering the newspapers, but I sat down on the steps of someone's home one morning to see if I was in it. And I saw myself in the paper with my puppet, and I raised that $12, and I was over the moon. But I knew from that day, really, from '87, I knew I was going to be a ventriloquist. And so I went to school, I'd done talent shows, and then I started to do benefit concerts. And I got to age 17, and I worked in like a holiday center in the UK when I was 17, and I got to do my show once a week for that whole season in 1993. And then it was really just grafting after that. The ventriloquist that taught me initially, Jimmy Townley, I roadied for him for 10 years. So I learned everything you needed to learn to be a ventriloquist by watching him on stage. When he got to a room, he would say, I need the lighting differently. That table down there are going to heckle me. He knew when it was going to be a bad night, or what you had to do really to make the show work for you, you know.
Sure.
And if he had a tough night, we'd drive home for the 3 hours or 2 hours, and he'd talk me through what went wrong or what went right, or why he had the room in the palm of his hand. You know, it was invaluable lessons for a 12-year-old. Up until I was 22, I roadied for him, and he said one day you can take over driving, you know, because I wasn't old enough to drive. And then I think I drove him a couple of times, and then I turned professional and left him. Then he had a son, and his son took over, and he was even cheaper than me. So that was good. Yeah.
Wow, that's phenomenal. Are there any aside from Jimmy? Did you have any other people that inspired you, that inspired some of your characters, maybe, or inspired you the way that you thought about your writing process for your characters?
Yeah, I didn't really start writing until I got into my mid-20s, I guess. But there was another ventriloquist called Keith Harris, who he had a record. This is the record in 1982. Keith and Orville. So this little green duck was mega famous over here, and I done my first TV show with Keith Harris when I was 16 years old, and he stood behind the camera and he watched me. And when I finished my spot, he took me to one side and said, any advice that he gave me on that, I just remember, you know, I really learned a lot by watching people like Keith Harris. But when they stand behind the camera and watch you and give you advice, you never forget that. He was always on the phone to me to see how I was over the years, you know. And when I turned professional, he was there. And when I got married as well, I got married in Las Vegas, and he sent me some dollars, you know, to gamble with. It just become, a lot of ventriloquists just become your friends. You know, it's such a great community because they did become really close. You know, Keith Harris, Jimmy Townley, Ron Lucas, they were really good to me, and I never forget that. and I'm hoping I've paid them all back sort of in my own way over the years, because I've put shows on, you know, which have involved all three of them since then. So yeah, I really respect the generation that paved the way for us younger ones, you know.
Yeah, totally. That's phenomenal. What was your first character when you started out, and do you have that character? Do you still use it today, or has it evolved into a new character?
I had a little plastic character with ginger hair. Then I had a little wooden character called Freckles. So these little characters I stopped using really. And when I got to the age of 22, I discovered Werner Findlay. Now, Jimmy Tamley put me in touch with Werner, and I just ordered this ginger little redhead girl called Tiny Tina. She was really one of my first main characters when I was 16.
Okay,
and
wow.
I was a big Michael Jackson fan as well. So I wrote to Werner. You couldn't just email Werner. You had to write to her and wait for 2 weeks. And then you wait another 2 weeks for the reply. And then she'd say, Steve, I got your letter. I'll start work on that character. And then another 4 weeks later, you get another reply to say, I've started on the character.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
emails are a blessing, aren't they?
They
But
are.
Werner's a legend, isn't she? So she made me a Michael Jackson puppet,
She
which I used in '93 when I was 17 years old, and it was quite bad timing, really. If you Google '93, Michael Jackson's choose your characters wisely. So I used Werner about four or five times. She made me about 5 characters, and then I believe Mary Ann Taylor took over her work.
Yeah.
And then I got about 5 characters from Mary Ann Taylor, and Mary's wonderful. And so I always wanted a Selberg as well. So I saved up for a Selberg, and I got myself one. I've only used it twice in the show, but yeah, I don't use wooden characters. I'm not really. I'm more into the Muppet style at the moment. You know, I've got a few
get more manipulation out of it sometimes.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. But when I'm backtracking again, but when I was 20, Keith Harris, who had the duck, you know, he gave me a puppet called Pongo. And so I kind of inherited a character from him, and it's Pongo the Skunk, it's called. And it's still in my act 25 years later, because it's quite a hit with the audience. Actually, it's my wife's favorite. Yeah,
it's a beautiful character. Yeah.
Have you seen Pongo?
I have. I've seen photos of him.
He's quite big. He's quite a big character.
And the Michael Jackson. I want to comment on the Verna characters that you have. I've seen the Michael Jackson, and as a soft puppet builder, it's very hard to get something that looks like even close to like a caricature of a celebrity. Yes. That it's hilarious. It's really
brilliant. What she done was the actual because I went to see him do a concert in Wembley in London in '93, I think it was, and no, I think it was about 1990 or something. But she actually made the gold outfit that he wore as well. It was the outfit that she made that impressed me more than anything. It just made it look incredible. You know, it looked completely real. It's quite scary the way it looked. The thing is, I can't
Michael Jackson.
Sadly, yes. Sadly, I'm no Terry Fator. I'm not a singer. I'm gutted. I can't sing, but I know that enhances your acts and your repertoire. But I wish I had those voices. But I had the Michael Jackson puppet just because I was a Michael Jackson fan. So I got him made, and I just done some jokes with him. I wrote some topical humor. So you're talking about the style of humor I write for them. So the Michael Jackson really was around. It was around his nose. You know, there was jokes going about his nose and picking his nose and things. it just fit that character at the time. Sure. But the news surrounding him was a little bit more tricky, so I had to drop him from the show eventually.
That's knowing your audience and when your material is dated. But it's an interesting thing. I also think that having a character, and I'm sure you felt this as well when you introduced the Michael Jackson Verna character into the show, and I'm sure that Terry has also recognized this. But when you have a character that it's a celebrity, you don't have to have jokes that have to set up who the character is, because the audience is able to click from the moment you bring it out. So that's neat.
Sorry, you're cutting out a bit there. It may be my internet. Is it quite far away, aren't I? I'm quite far away from Dallas. Sorry, we do that question again.
Oh, I was just saying that the having the character that was Michael Jackson is a lot easier to, when you bring it out, the audience immediately knows who it is. You don't have to have any type of setup to establish the character, which is probably also helpful.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't need to say, hi, I'm Michael Jackson, or this is Michael Jackson. It was
Right.
Michael Jackson. So I should have brought him out and then give him a Dallas accent, or give him an Australian accent and completely confuse the audience. It might have been funnier if I rather than Michael Jackson. He could have been Latoya Jackson or Janet Jackson.
Yeah,
which,
exactly.
which
Well,
it probably was.
could you talk a little bit about Britain's Got Talent and how that came to be?
Yeah, well, I've been in the business for about 17 or 18 years already. And so I was just starting to make a name for myself in the business. I started to, I done this thing called Educating Archie. It was an old ventriloquist on the radio, and in the 1950s. And in 2006, I actually co-wrote a play called Re-Educating Archie. And so I played a ventriloquist, but we had the original dummy from the old show. So it kind of got me in the papers a little bit, and a little bit on the radio. So my name started to get a little bit more known, but I hadn't had any big TV breaks or anything. I was doing cruise ships, and over here we do pantomimes. So I did that, and I done private concerts, you know. But
Could you explain that? What are pantomimes?
Pantomimes, it's when men dress up as ladies and wear tights and makeup, and it's like Cinderella. You got Cinderella the story, or Aladdin, the story. It's we do this at Christmas, every Christmas. It could be Puss in Boots. It's always a famous story, like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. So it's a nice story. You kind of know the beginning and the end. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And you actually get like someone playing Snow White. You get seven dwarfs in the pantomime. So it's a comedy play. It's very slapstick, but it's very British tradition. It's a great thing over here. And they always had a ventriloquist in it, you know. So I was always going to be in work at Christmas time. I've only done 11 pantos, but there's many ventriloquists that have probably done about 40 or 50. But sometimes at Christmas, I like to do a variety show instead of panto. So I choose to do most of my acts, really. When you do panto, you get to chop up your act and do it within the story, you know, because it's like Snow White, the Seven Dwarfs. You can come out and entertain the dwarfs in their house, or at the wedding at the end when Snow White or Cinderella gets married. So you entertain at the wedding, at the castle, you know, at the party, the after show party. And then, but you have to do all the dancing, you have to do the acting. So the ventriloquist and my character, for instance, if it was Aladdin, I had Pongo, and we were called Ping and Pong. We were the Chinese policemen, and so we would play policemen, and we'd have to chase Aladdin around the stage for a couple of hours in a pair of tights, and that was fun. And I've done Aladdin for about 5 times. I love Aladdin. This is a good. It's a good story. Yeah. So that's panto.
Has being in that helped your career, or was it more like a fun thing to do that kept you working at the time?
Pantomime, you mean? It's pantomime. You always get a big name at the top. There's always someone famous from television over here mainly. But very recently, they started to bring stars over, like Pamela Anderson and David Hasselhoff have come over to do pantomime as well. You know, so you get quite a few big names over here doing it now. It's big business. Really big business. And so pantomime was always good, but I hadn't had a TV break in my career. And I started when I was 12. I was now 37, and it was 2013. I do a lot of cruise ships. So after pantomime, which I just finished, I thought I'm going to have a few months off because we had a new baby at the time. And so I took some time off. Then I had a phone call from Britain's Got Talent. And they called me for 7 years running. And I always turned it down because I was always working. I was always on ships. And so this time I had a few weeks off. So they said, well, if you want to come and audition, it's at the London Palladium, famous theatre, which I loved because I worked there when I was 20 for 9 months. So I thought, yeah, I'll go back there. I went there and I done. You see the audition on YouTube. It went from 6 minutes to 20 seconds. That's all they showed. But there was a standing ovation.
Okay.
Only got my word for it. There was. Yeah. Okay. And then so it just went phenomenal. So I went along, done the audition, and it went great. I got through to the show, and because they only showed 20 seconds, I think on a show like that, you have to have something up your sleeve for the live shows. And so I got on the live shows with other characters. I wanted to use Pongo, but they didn't want to see Pongo. They wanted Arthur Larker back again. So they wanted to see my, excuse me, they wanted to see my character that I auditioned with.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, I'll bring him back again, but I need to add something. I can't just do Arthur Larker. So I thought I'm going to have something up my sleeve. And I didn't tell the producers that I had another puppet planned.
Oh, wow.
So, but this was my Verna Finley character. He was called Butch, and he had muscles, and he had some shorts on and a suit. And I used to do this with the Verna Finley character. He had a suit, but it was Velcro. She made it so it was Velcro. And I pulled a suit, and then he was in his gym shorts. Yeah. And so he was standing there like half naked. It was hilarious at the time. I'd done that on another TV show, but he was sat there for 10 years because, I dropped him from the act. And my wife, Nina, said, you should change that puppet because it looks a little bit like Simon Cowell. So I sent him to a puppet designer, and he changed it, and he made it look like Simon Cowell. So gave him a fake sunburn, gave him the hair and the glasses and the suit, and he sent it back 2 weeks later, 1 week before the shows went live. Yeah, very fine line. That was nerve-wracking, but it turned up, and I laughed a lot when I saw it, and my wife was smiling. So I thought, well, I'll just take it along and see what happens. So we done the last rehearsals for the show, and I still didn't mention the Simon Cowell puppet. I done the Arthur Larker, and then we went to the live shows the next day. There was one more rehearsal, and literally two hours before we went live, I done my last little rehearsal. But I thought, okay, I'm going to do it here because I can't surprise them on the night because they might cut my act. So I done Arthur Larker, and I pulled out the Simon Cowell puppet in the last rehearsal, and the place went crazy. They went mad. Wow. So just because they didn't know I had that in the box. So the producer ran down, and they said,
did you have an audience during this? I mean, was there
only the crew?
Only the crew. Okay.
Yeah, the crew and the other acts that were watching.
Gotcha.
And the hosts that are called Ant and Deck, that they doubled over laughing. So I thought, I need to do this tonight. The producer said, please put that in tonight. Simon will love it. And going on a show like that as a professional act is a big risk for anybody, you know. Anyone that's been doing it for like 15, 20 years. So I did put my life on the line, really. But also getting a puppet made up of the actual boss of the show is probably going to double ruin you, I think. I was extremely brave doing it. Yeah. But when I pulled out the Simon Cowell puppet, it just seemed to work. And when they panned to Simon's face, you saw the reaction. It was great. And I done it again a week later when I pulled out his ex-girlfriend. It wasn't even his girlfriend, but Sunita, the other character in the final that you showed earlier.
Yes.
She was in the audience, sat behind Simon. So because they were there, it made the impact bigger in the studio. It was electric in the studio.
So she was his ex-girlfriend at the time?
Sunita, yeah. He's friends with all of his ex-girlfriends. I'm not saying he's got a lot, but he's got a lot. And so it was just extra funny because they were panning to the puppet, and then to Simon, and then to Sunita's puppet, and then to Sunita. And their reaction actually gave my act, the end of my act, probably an extra 2 minutes of laughter because it was just so funny to them. It was so funny. Yeah. If they weren't in the audience, I don't know if it all worked as much. And you take that scenario out of the show, the Sunita and the Simon Cowell puppet, it's not really as funny. They have to be in the audience for it to work, I think.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, totally.
And it did work, yeah, in the end.
Wow. What was it like? So had you tested, I mean, I assumed you had tested the material, but what was that like writing for it? And did you get the puppet and then write for it, or had you written the bit that you were doing with the Simon Cowell character and then you got the puppet?
I got the puppet made and then I panicked, which is what I always seem to do. I always seem to do that. So I got the Simon Cowell. Obviously, I wrote this especially for the show, so I wrote a few gags. And if you look back at the first live show that I do, I only say one line with Simon, and it's all what I planned. It was just the impact of the puppet that was hilarious, and all he says was his famous line was, "I did not like it. I absolutely loved it." So I knew that that's all I had to say to get the audience on my side, and so I said that, and I got them on my side. And then I didn't get through that night, but then I got the wild card, which brought me back for the final the next time. So if there is a ventriloquist going on, all I'll say is just have something planned, but surprise the producers as well, because you can't go on and just do your vent act. I think these days you need something. I've seen that John Pizzi has gone on there. John Pizzi.
Yes.
It's fantastic what he done on there. He really, it was just a nice twist to ventriloquism. Terry Fator's gone on there and done the same. It's just truly beautiful what Terry done, and Darcy Lynn. It's great if you can come out and do something different. I loved what Michael Paul done on it as well.
Yes,
Michael's great. He's a great stand-up comic, isn't he, Michael?
He is. He's phenomenal. And what I'll say, I don't know if this is the same. This works the same way for Britain's Got Talent, but for AGT, you could be a hilarious act, but sometimes your comedy isn't right in their platform because of like what you said, where you have to be quick and it has to be like bam, bam, bam versus comedy that builds on itself, or if you have a character that wants to pan to the audience or talk to the audience, it builds, and you can't have that. So
an act does build. When you've got 2.5 minutes, you haven't got time to build anything.
No.
So you have to be visual. You have to be really slick. And I was always ready for ad libs as well when I went on the show. So if there's but I was quite overwhelmed with the reaction. So I'm quite a shy person as it is. I think many ventriloquists are quite shy, but I've always been really shy. So without the characters, I'm kind of a little scared, a scaredy cat. But I'm really good at ad-libbing actually in certain moments. I don't think I was on BGT. I stuck to my script, which is very unlike me. I'm very, apart from the Simon Cowell puppet, which I pulled out. But it was actually a puppet maker that saved me on that show, Peter Pullen.
Yes.
Because I was only told on the Monday that I'd got through to the finals. So I had to phone up a puppet maker, and you'll appreciate this, Landon. You need more than a week to make a puppet. I gave Peter Pullen 3 days to make Sunita, and he didn't sleep. He made her in 3 days, and he saved me on that show because the impact of her coming out was incredible. So it's down to us ventriloquists can't work without you builders. You're our lifeline, So I thank you for doing that, because it's incredible what you do for us. Yeah, we need some great builders.
On behalf of all builders, thank you so much. That's amazing. 3 days. I mean, I can build a puppet in a week if I like have a crunch time, but 3 days is, man. And not to mention the fact that you have to draw up the character and then pick what the whole appearance and everything else.
I know. Well, they had to order all the pieces, the wigs and the clothes. And I mean, Sunita was famous for having the leaves on her. So where did you find those leaves? I know, but they found them. The eyes, everything. He didn't have anything there, like the material for Sunita, and the shoes as well. It just looked like